Welcome to the Voodoo Power Podcast.
Welcome to Plates and Pancakes. We're sitting down today with Tobias Jacobi. Coach Jacobi serves as the strength and conditioning coach at Strong Rock Christian School, where he has been for the last 10 years. Prior to Strong Rock, Jacobi spent 15 years coaching mostly at the Division I level, including East Carolina, Charleston Southern, Kent State, Western Carolina, Elon, UNC-Chapel Hill, and Cumberland University. During his time at Strong Rock, the school has had 18 different teams earn state playoff tournament appearances, and 2 different teams win area region championships. In 2017, Strong Rock Christian School earned the NSCA Strength of America Award, along with having a total of 5 athletes earn the NSCA Strength and Conditioning All-American honors. In 2018, Coach Jacobi was recognized as the NHSSCA Coach of the Year. Jacobi has a Bachelor of Science in Health and Physical Education from Cumberland University and a Master of Science from Setanta College in Performance Coaching. He holds a CSCS, an HSSC, a USAW, RSCC, get them right, RSCC with a need to distinguish, USATF Level 1, and a title as Performance Institute Level 1 certifications. That's quite a list, Coach, so I'm very happy to have you on the show.
Well, I appreciate it. I'm excited to be a part, and it's always an honor to share what we do at Strong Rock, and then obviously in my career, it's been a path that God has definitely had his hand over for sure. I've been a lot of fun.
I've been working quite a bit overtime, so I had a lot of time to listen to podcasts, and what you said there definitely resonated in the podcast I listened to, is the faith component of your life and how you've ended up where you're at.
Yeah, it's a pretty neat experience, I would say. I did the typical college kind of meathead strength coach deal. Rewind that a little bit. I'll never forget the first time I told my mom I wanted to be a strength and conditioning coach. Literally, her first thought was, they pay people for that. And, that was back in the late 90s, early 2000s. And so the industry is nowhere near what it is today. And having the opportunity to just, be around some unbelievable athletes and coaches has been such a blessing. But it's amazing how God works. And I ended up at Strong Rock really first and foremost because my now current athletic director and best friend, Gary Schofield, turned down my job because they interviewed him for the strength and conditioning position at Strong Rock. He turned it down, and the gentleman who had just been named the head football coach at Strong Rock was actually my offensive coordinator in high school. And we hadn't probably spoken in maybe 15 years. And he just happened to Google me because he knew I was in the industry and was looking for names. And it was the perfect place, perfect time, perfect situation. My youngest at the time was really struggling in school. And, at the time, the state of North Carolina, I think, was 48 teacher compensation. And so you get what you pay for. And she was struggling. My wife and I, obviously a tremendous amount of stress on our marriage. At that time with it, and this whole little Strong Rock Christian School thing opened up, and it has been nothing but unanswered prayer, and has allowed me to become so much better of a coach, so much better of a father, so much better of a husband, so much better of a friend. It's allowed me to explore different things, realize that I definitely do not have all the answers. I can honestly tell you this. It took me about 2 weeks, those first 2 weeks during the summer when I was at Strong Rock, and I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. Holy crap. I'm really good at programming. I was really good at, periodization and things. And I'm like, holy, this is not what I had thought it was. And luckily, I was able to find some really, really, really good mentors that ended up being some of my best friends on this planet and really helped me realize, what was appropriate from a X's and O standpoint. You can't coach a high school kid like you coach a college kid. So learning that aspect, dealing with parents has definitely been something that I'm trying to get better at, so it has definitely been something that, God has definitely watched over every single little journey, every single little jump, hop, skip, whatever it was. It definitely has been that. And I'm just trying to be a good steward of what he's blessed me with. That's for sure.
Well, to kind of dive into that a little bit, I've bugged you all week, asking questions and kind of setting this thing up. And you said yesterday you were at state cheerleading meet. So
yep.
Learning how to temper the experience of the Division I college strength coach for football. I know you probably had other teams, but football really gets thrown in there. How your attitude was, how you were, what you came up with, what you were taught. Now going to the high school level and you're at a high school cheerleading meet. What kind of tempering process does that take?
It's funny. A lot of times when I talk to kids that I coached, 10, 15 years ago, I do a lot of apologizing just for the simple fact that I realize how intense I was. Luckily, they understand, and it's always great to get those phone calls of appreciation and things like that. And I'm the same way. There's the coaches that really impacted my life. I stay in touch with still to this day, and call and tell them how much I appreciate them. But, it was, when I got at Strong Rock, it was a very interesting first year. I don't know how many complaints they got about me. Luckily, my athletic director shielded me from that, supported me. I had unbelievable support from that aspect. And actually, after my first year at Strong Rock, we had an administrative change with our principals. They offered me the assistant principal's job. So, they liked my discipline and accountability and how I did things in that respect. But I also saw it really, I guess the best way to put it honestly is we've always heard, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I'd always heard that coaching year after year after year. And we all say it resonates with us. But I think really coming to the high school level, it really hit home for me. And I truly, truly believe if you can coach at the high school level, people think, the NFL or, Major League Baseball or, college football, high profile college football is the top tier. That's where your best coaches are. And I'm going to completely disagree. I think the high school level, the middle school level is where some of your best coaches are. I worked on a staff. I was a part of a staff where we had the 2nd and the 6th pick in the NFL draft. Okay, guess what we did? We said, go over there, do that, and then we got out of the way. That's when you have great athletes like that, that's kind of that's all you got to do. Don't make sure you don't get them hurt. And, it's really took some time, I guess, for me to learn, hey, I do need to, I don't want to say tone it down, but be very intentional with my words, very intentional with my actions, very intentional with how I coach people. So that way, I could definitely get what I want to get across. And I think part of that too is me learning and again, I apologize. My AD just called me, so he'll get over it.
You got to do what you got to do. Business falls in there somewhere.
Yeah. But I think I'm definitely more on the backside of my career than the front side. The legacy part of, what are they going to say about me when I'm done, when I'm gone, when I'm out of here? At every place, it resonates with me a lot more than it previously did. And so learning how to deal with those things, because again, at the high school level, you're dealing with children. And, I teach 2 middle school classes. So I'm dealing with 12, 13-year-old kids. That's a lot different than dealing with a 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22-year-old. And understanding that the impact that as a coach I can have at that age, I think that's kind of one of the reasons I've been more intentional about what I say, how I coach, how it's taken. And, I still want to attack the day. We still want to get it better. We still want to push ourselves to be the best version of ourselves. But I also am recognizing, as I've gotten older and wiser, that there's a million ways to skin a cat. And especially for kids, it is definitely one of those things that you really have to be, Jeff Connors used to say, you have to be a master of charismatic rapport. At the high school level, that's even more important because of just the different walks of life that you're going to deal with these kids. Now, you dealt with that. I dealt with that at the collegiate level, no doubt. But when, you have the demographics are completely different. The financial situation is different. The home lives are different. It's just so much. I think as a coach, you could be so much more impactful at the lower levels if you do things the right way.
Now, I've got a question based around that, but before we get there, you said something in there, and that stood out to me. I don't know what the demographic of coaches that listen to this is. I don't know if they're mostly young, if they're more mature. I don't know. But the legacy part, it's amazing how as you get older, that becomes more important than a lot of other things that used to be really important in your life. At what point did you start noticing that you needed to leave the world better than you found it?
I always had the mindset of any job that I ever took, my number one goal was I have to leave it better than when I found it. That was number one with every job. And early in my career, I bounced around a lot because I made those moves up as good coaches do. And, I guess the first time it really hit me was when I first got fired, when I got fired at Kent State. And, my ego took a huge hit, just as anybody's does when you go through that. But being around some of my mentors, Gary Schofield, Brian Johnson, Garrett Keith, guys like that are just really, really unbelievable men. And just, Rob Brokaw's another one, Rick Hughley's another one, just great people that I want to, and I know the impact that those guys have had on me. And I've been blessed enough to go watch those guys coach and be around them and see how they interact with their kids. That's what I want for me. That's what I want. I want somebody to come visit me and say, wow, that was really impressive what they do there. So probably about 6 or 7 years ago, it really started taking shape of, what are people going to say about me on the back end of my career?
I can understand that. I started evaluating things later on in life of, would I do it for free? Obviously, we all enjoy money, but if I wouldn't do it for free, is it really going to fulfill what I'm trying to do? So to hear you say that definitely fell into, I guess, where I am in my life. Now, the question that I had skipped over to get to that one was, I had heard you in a podcast, and I guess I'd never really thought about it until I heard you guys talking about it, but you need to put your best coaches at the lowest levels.
No doubt.
You kind of alluded to that there, and I had never thought about it that way, but there's a lot of truth to that. When you reach a certain level, the guys know the game. They can get a lot done. They don't necessarily need you there, but getting kids in the right direction and being the coach they need at that lower level. How did you start putting all that together?
Well, that's an idea I heard from multiple people. I think I heard it first from Ron McKeefery when he and I, whether I was listening to a podcast or you and I are having a conversation. But honestly, it's the European model. It's what they do over in Europe. Their best coaches coach at the lower levels. They work with those academies. They work with those kids who are, 15, 14, 13, because guess what? Those are the kids who need it. The elite level athlete, yes, you're going to have your tweaks and all that neat stuff. But if you really want to be a great coach, you've got to go into an environment that you are just totally uncomfortable in and be able to make it work. And I firmly believe that if you want to be and now don't get me wrong, there are some great coaches at the college level. There's some great coaches at the professional level. I have a lot of friends who coach both of those, multiple sports. But you take somebody and put them in a room with a bunch of seventh graders, and then you say, okay, we're teaching a hinge progression. Good luck. A 6-year coaching veteran, if I'm the head strength coach at Western Carolina, which I was at one time, there's no way on God's green earth I could pull that off. Now, I could get up in front of 100 football players and we could power clean and sprint and all that. No problem. But you take me and you put me in a middle school classroom, in a middle school weight room, I wouldn't survive. And, it's something that obviously when I took the job, I had to do, but it's something that I recognized as being a lot harder than, my high school kids. My high school classes are honestly pretty simple now. We have our system in place. Kids know it, a little bit of redirection here, a couple coaching cues, and it flows really well. I got to coach my butt off with my middle school kids. That's just the way it is. I got to be all over it. And, I think that would be what to me makes the most sense. If one of the hot topics is LTAD, long-term athletic development. And I'm actually in the process of, I'm trying to add another middle school class. I want to work with 6th, 7th, and 8th graders on top of my high school classes. So I'm actually begging to not have a planning period at all. So we'll see how that works. But, we have a system where it's going to take our kids from the 6th grade all the way up until they're seniors in high school of physical development. And if everybody, LTAD, that whole concept, wherever you fall on that, I think if it's done properly, it could be very, very beneficial. But you got to be a great coach to be able to coach those kids and to keep them engaged and keep them, just from not touching each other. It's just something that it's been a learning process for sure. No doubt.
So to build onto that a little bit, kind of where you were going, I could see how coaches wouldn't want to go back to that level because it's not where they want to be. It's not the upper tier. You're not coaching the big squats. You're not coaching the big cleans. At some point in there, you had, I guess, to learn to enjoy the process and be at the the grassroots of it all. Was that a learned behavior, or was that something that was innate into what you wanted to do?
That's a great question. I think because I've always been more of a process person. I enjoy, I love routine. I think a lot of coaches do. I've always been, okay, I've got to get up. I've got to do this. Bam, 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 bam. You know, the big squat, the big bench, it's all relative. I love it when our kids in the weight room get excited for that kid who cleans 100 pounds for the first time. I love it when I see the kid who doesn't even play a sport, I call them civilians, in our class, when they do things that they never thought they could do. I love it when kids rally around each other in that respect. So, and now I'm also going to say this. I've been very blessed with some freakishly athletic kids. So, we've got a kid right now that jumps 44 inches, ran 4.4 on laser. He's going to go play at an FCS school. He's a difference maker. He's a 5'10" kid who can dunk a basketball any which way you can imagine. So I still get that. So I'll have my, what we call freaks or whatever. So I'll have that from time to time. But I've just always enjoyed the process. That's just been who I am. I guess it's just how I'm wired. The final verdict necessarily wasn't always what I was looking for. I mean, yes, I'm a numbers guy. Data is important. We do a ton of assessments, things like that. So I like that, but I've also understand that the process is more important than, one day, one exercise, one lift.
You were just speaking about the freaks, and we've all seen them. They show up, they make the gym look awesome. They make your program look awesome. But I also heard you talk about this. You can't judge the program on the freaks. You have to judge the program on the weakest kid in the room.
I would agree. I think, well, I wouldn't say the weakest. I think what you want to do is you got to judge the program on, in my opinion, are the kids healthy when they play sports? Are they getting better on the field? Is what you're doing in the weight room having a tangible impact with what goes on the field? And as a coach, you have to be willing to, I think a smart coach, a good coach has to be willing to look at their program and say, this is what we've always done, and this is how we've done it, but is there a better way? We changed this past year because I wanted to get more speed and agility work in our program. And we have a lot of multi-sport kids at our school. So I have a ton of kids who don't have an off season. So my after school, my before school stuff wasn't as well attended as I would wanted it to be. So I said, you know what? I'm going to change. I've got to look at how we lift. And it took me probably about a month to set up a lifting structure that I felt good with. And then we basically took a day from that we used that traditionally we lifted on, and we changed that to our agility day. And we took our day that we usually did our corrective exercises on, and we turned that into our linear speed day. And, knock on wood, I think we've had already some benefits from that so far in this football season. So definitely excited to see how that process continues. But as a coach, you've got to be willing to adjust to fit your kids. But I do believe, are they healthy? Or is what you're doing having an impact on the field. And, when I got when our quarterback takes off for a 60-yard run and my AD keeps saying he's, not as fast as he should be, hey, maybe it is what we were doing. And the best part was we did speed work earlier that day, so it really looked good.
So I had a note on that too, because that was a question I was going to get to. You had to evaluate what you wanted out of the squat and what your kids were getting out of the squat. What I had kind of picked up was maybe you had done away with the back squat totally for the front squat. That takes a big evaluation on a coach's part and walking away from biases they have developed. At what point did you learn you had to detach from certain movements to get more growth out of the athletes?
Well, a couple reasons. And the squat one is, is an easy one, where when I was in East Carolina, I started noticing, especially, it was highly illustrated, I guess is a good way to put it, an increase in lower lumbar spine injuries with kids coming into college or issues with those. So my mindset when I came to Strong Rock was, okay, I'm a really good coach. Me personally, I was a power lifter. Had some pretty good success for a little while. I squat really, really well. So I said, I can teach this. This is what we're going to do. I'm going to teach a squat, and I'm going to fix all these back injuries. Well, after about 3 years, we squatted. I still had kids who had back issues. And so I said, okay, I've got to look at what I'm doing. I heard Buddy Morris talk about, a lot of strength coaches, they do what they did. That's the philosophy of whatever you did when you were in college or the first head strength coach that you worked for. That's where you came from. And there was definitely a truth to that. And so I said, okay, we'll have to look at what is the best thing for my athletes. Specifically, we talk about the back squat versus the front squat. You look at research, and I definitely believe as Americans, we probably need to be better with our research from a strength conditioning standpoint. I think overseas is by far superior when it comes to true evidence-based practitioners. And again, that's one of the reasons I did the whole Setanta thing. I got better at that. But in regards to the back squat, I look at the lower lumbar spine compression significantly higher when you put the bar on your back compared to when it's in the front in the rack position. Well, that to me says front squat wins. One of our major exercises that we also do is the power clean. And number one exercise coming from Louis Simmons out of his own mouth, number one exercise to increase the power clean is the front squat. Okay. Well, now I've got two things that I'm looking forward to on the whole front squat versus back squat conversation. Everything you do athletically is in front of you. It's that way. It's not that way. Okay. So the weight, your load, your stress, your stimulus, it makes sense. It's more quote unquote athletic or sport specific. If you subscribe to that idea. And then two, so just very simply anecdotal. I've squatted over 900 pounds. Okay. On my greatest day as a college football player, I was an average NAIA offensive line. We've all had those kids that were weight room warriors. And I started thinking about it. They had some really good back squats, but they would struggle front squatting. I would remember that. So I think it's a more athletic movement by far. So when I started looking at all that, I said, oh, wow, maybe front squat is the way to go. And then I actually talked to some other high school coaches, and they were a predominantly front squat program. And it's like, if it's working other places. And, you could say what you want to in regards to numbers and things like that, but I've had multiple kids front squat over 400 pounds. That's really impressive at the high school level. You know, I've got 300-pound front squat is really impressive. I've had tons of kids do that. So we're getting strong. We're getting strong. We're hitting it in areas we need to, and everything's being addressed that has to be addressed. It's easier. I think it's easier to teach. I rarely ever have to tell a kid get lower, because it's just natural. You have a better range of motion with that. So it just makes sense to me, that would be the way we would go with our program. So it's not one person or I didn't come up with the idea. I've just, owned it, and I think it's been really, really good for us.
And with kids, you have the room to make some changes and not really lose any ground to speak of. They recover so fast. They get strong so fast.
Yeah.
Whether you do a back squat or front squat or whatever, if you took that out for a cycle, you're not going to see, I don't think, a huge change, but you might see you might see more benefits. So it gives you time to evaluate and then correct the ship.
Well, and honestly, we've done a lot more heavy unilateral stuff. I don't front squat all the time anymore, like I used to when I first jumped down the rabbit hole. I've done, and this comes probably from a lot of Mike Boyle influence. I do a ton of reverse lunges. We'll do, heavy. I've had kids hit doubles and triples with 315 pounds on a reverse lunge, but they're holding it in the front squat position. So, it's, again, our kids are getting strong, and that's the most important part.
Now, I've heard you talk about this. Wisdom is experience and knowledge minus the ego. My question would be, in today's world, the experiences, I'm not going to say are less, but they're definitely different than a generation ago. How do you think that might affect wisdom going forward?
Ooh, I think the key with experience is it's a good one. When I made that statement, it was around the time that things were, I guess, pretty negative, especially with social media and things like that. And, experience is something that you're going to have to go out and find. And like you just said, that there are fewer in that respect. And I don't know, you're just going to have to be willing to jump through more hoops to gain some of that experience. Wisdom is difficult because you've got to drop that ego part. And if you're a good coach, I think if you're a man in general, you have an ego. But if you're a good coach, you've got an ego. We all do. It's not a bad thing. It's just you have to know when your ego needs to take a step back and honestly become a better listener. That's one of the things that I have really tried to be intentional about here is just shut up and listen. I've got my assistant right now she's younger than I am, and she has a lot of ideas, and she'll get going, and I've caught myself sometimes and then I'll just shut up. I need to listen, and I need to listen to what her ideas are, and we may walk through them, we may modify them, we may do it, but I want to empower her to have a voice, have an opinion, and I want to be better for making sure I'm doing my due diligence as her boss. So I think learning that point of becoming a better listener is a skill set that a lot of young coaches would really, really, really benefit from.
Well, let's take that to the next level. So listening versus hearing, how do you create a message worth listening to, especially for kids who are starting to get in that point in their life where they're trying to find their own way and actually probably detach from what adults are telling them?
And they know everything. You're right. And but you have to be engaging, and you have to be intentional about that engagement. And you have to meet them where they are. The idea of when I was growing up, you were growing up, do it because coach said to, and you did it. That is few and far between. And you have to know who you're speaking to as well. You have to know, am I talking to kids who buck authority? Am I talking to kids who listen to authority? Am I talking to what is the culture of the place I'm at? Is vitally important. What's my support system? In my realm, does my athletic director support me? Does my principal support me? Does my head of school support me? How does that look? But you have to meet them where they're at. You have to engage them. And you have to make sure that they have opportunities to see you differently than just the weight room guy. Just like you talked about earlier, where I'm at the state cheer competition. Okay. So they held that at Columbus State. So it's about a 2-hour drive. So me and AD, we hopped in the car, we drove down at Friday night football game the night before. So 2-hour drive, and we get there early, and we're hanging out, and I see some parents, I see some our coaches, our cheer coaches, I see some of the kids, and you can just see the look on their face to see me there. Well, I'm sitting there, find out one of my baseball players is in a showcase at Columbus State, which was literally across the street. So we were the last team to go on. So I walked across the street. I went over and I hung out, saw the kid's mom, talked to her for a good while. So really being intentional about being visible helps you get that engagement later on. I'm very intentional with what we do on our social media platforms. I'm going to post something every single day during the school week. And it's literally, if you actually go back and look at my social media, there's a process to it. Monday, that's going to be my lifter of the week. Tuesday, 9 times out of 10, that'll be a video that I've shot, either Tuesday, Monday, or something along those lines. Now, sometimes it's also, we had an award for, something with one of our sports. So I'll put that on Tuesday and then maybe bump my Wednesday. I'm going to always have something nutritionally I'll post every week. I'm going to have a motivational quote I'm going to post every week. But a lot of the kids follow that. A lot of the kids see that. They know that. So I'm engaging them. And, my kids sit on, I'm bad about it too. We all are probably now, where we sit on our phone nonstop and look at Instagram or Facebook or Twitter, whatever. But meeting them where they're at helps with that level of engagement. Giving them something where it's not just Coach Jacobi telling me to do this, but that, hey, he's going to be at my cheerleading event. He's going to be at my state cross country meet. He's going to be at, the soccer games, the basketball games, the volleyball games. Now, a lot of times I'm working those events, and so I have to be there. But they don't know that, and that doesn't matter to them. But really, again, it goes back to that, showing them how much you care before they care how much you know. Doing things along those lines is really important. And that allows me to develop the relationships with those kids to keep them engaged. Now, do I have a great relationship with all of my students? No. That is the furthest thing from the truth. but I'm not going to lie to you and say I don't strategically pick out kids to cultivate relationships with so I can control every situation that I need to. Because we all went through high school, we all went through middle school, we all know who the popular kids are, the big kids are. I've got my own, I guess, mouthpieces inside the locker room, and it's intentional because I want to make sure as best I can control the narrative anytime my kids are around me. And I think that as a good coach, that's vitally important.
Now, before we get too far away from some of the stuff we've talked about into some other stuff,
Okay.
I've got a little bit funny story about how we did it here, and it was it was an accident. But in your job now, you've got an element that you never would have probably dreamed of in your earlier career, but you have to have biblical world integration.
Yep.
Because you're at a Christian school.
Yep.
How have you been able to do that?
Actually, it's not that hard because I had the benefit of when I got fired from Kent State, it was a really bad time of year. All the jobs were gone. And it was May. And I ended up getting a job at Charleston Southern University, which formerly, before it was Charleston Southern, was Baptist College. So it's a faith-based school. So I had been lucky enough to where I didn't have to teach classes and things. I just coached. But I was around the concept of biblical world integration and things like that mindset, a biblical worldview. I was indoctrinated, I guess is a good way to put it, with that idea. So when I came to Strong Rock, they said, yeah, you got to do this. It's like, okay, all right. Well, I've actually developed a system with how we do that. And it's very simple. And it's based off of two things that we have in our program, our core values, which is respect, excellence, accountability, performance, which the acronym is REAP. And we have biblical, we have Bible verses that go with each. And then two, it also lends itself to our class Bible class verse, Galatians 6:9. Basically, you reap what you sow. And so that makes perfect sense in the weight room. You put the work in, you're going to get what you want. So that was very simple. And then I also include our athlete's attitude. And that comes from, I think it's Jeff Jensen's Athlete's Attitude Spectrum. If you're familiar with that, really neat thing. Talks, and it goes through what it takes to be a championship program, whether you're, I got to go back. It's compelled, committed, compliant, reluctant, resistant. And we actually have I actually have an objective way of getting each student their athlete's attitude. We have a scale and a score, we have a rubric that we can implement to where we can see how their level of commitment to our strength and conditioning program. And it takes into account everything we do with our classes. It takes into account the sports that they're part of. It takes into account all the extra workout and training opportunities that we have. And so it's one of those things that once I've set up my system, it was really easy. I want to talk about my core values with our kids. I want to talk about having a compelled attitude and committed attitude. I want to talk about those things. I want to really hit home the importance of those pieces of our program. Doing it in a biblical fashion makes perfect sense. So usually on a Friday, the last 5 minutes, we would go over a core value, or we would go over one of those committed or being compelled. And it's actually become very, very simple once I developed my system. We actually had a workshop for professional development, and they had teachers from all around the school go through. There was like, I think 8 of us. I was one of them, and they had you lead a BWI lesson for all the other teachers to see how to do it. And just the fact that the weight room guy was asked, I thought was pretty, I must be doing something right from that standpoint. But, you know, it's actually been pretty easy. because of how applicable the Bible is to what we do on a daily basis.
I had a guy, we bench press on Wednesdays. I had a guy, his parents were on private. I don't know how much you know about it, but we have a private gym. One of the guys was getting kind of some flack from his mom and dad. He was missing Wednesday night church youth group to come out here and bench press. So I said, okay, we can make this work. What if we do bench press and Bible stories? Will that get you out of hot water? He's like, I don't know. We can try. He's like, you got a story? And I'm like, yeah, I can dig up a story. It don't take much. We went through Abraham and Jacob and kind of all that, because I thought it did pertain to strength, right? I mean, or Abraham and Isaac. I said Jacob. Abraham and Isaac. Isaac was 36 years old when Abraham put him on the altar to sacrifice him. Well, Isaac had all the strength in the world to overcome an old man. It was about a different kind of strength, Yeah. So we used that, and I didn't think nothing of it. I had some secular kids, we'll call them secular kids in here, that didn't go to church or whatever. That's fine. They still bring that up. They still talk about that story. They still say, hey, when are we going to do that again? And I'm like, well, you guys haven't said anything about it, so I didn't know how I hit. But apparently in their life, that was actually a very big deal. So,
Awesome.
I just figured I would relate that to what I'd heard you talk about in the past and kind of verge the two. But let's see. I know you talked about it a little bit when I believe you were, was it Western Carolina? You were with Jeff Connors, or am I getting the schools mixed up?
I was with Coach C twice. I was a graduate assistant at the University of North Carolina when he came in, and then he hired me at East Carolina, my last college job.
Okay, so I'd heard you talk about him as a mentor in some of your podcasts, so I kind of looked into that to kind of feel you out for where you were on sprinting and adding that into your weight room. You may agree with some of the stuff he did, you may not. We all establish our own paths, but it sounded like, without putting words in his mouth, what I'd listened to was he was very, very big on accelerations.
Yeah.
Where does that fall into your program?
It's that. We are 100% aligned. That's a given. Again, acceleration, you're going to get your biggest bang for your buck. Let's be honest. You can do so many different things to positively impact that from a training standpoint, whether it's in the weight room, whether it's resistance stuff, whether it's just technical work, whether it's plyometrics. All those things are going to lead itself into improving your ability to accelerate.
And then targeting muscles that overcome inertia. So really, especially at that acceleration level. So are you looking at, well, it'd be easier just to say, what are you looking at to target those muscles?
A lot of times what we'll do is that'll fall in line with a lot of our lower body cueing drills. And so it comes a lot from, and I know where Coach Connors got it from. So I saw him when I was with him when we were developing this, and a lot of Franz Bosch, a lot of stuff with Franz Bosch. I don't know if you're familiar with him or not, but he had a very, very big influence on a lot of the ideas. Franz Bosch. I love a lot of Charlie Francis stuff. I think that he was way ahead of his time, and so I would definitely lean on those two from that standpoint. But a lot of just, for us, it fits into our technical lower body work from a speed standpoint.
I had heard you were asked the question, if you could have dinner with somebody that had passed, who would it be? And Charlie Francis was your first answer in this podcast that I'd listened to. What about his stuff was so, or is so, attractive to you?
As a strength coach, he loved to lift weights. I mean, a lot of times you're going to run into the world of track and field, and especially with sprinters, they're going to be very hesitant to lift weight. And not only did Charlie love to lift weights, he liked to lift heavy weights. So that, as a strength coach, that's attractive, And so I think he was probably the first guy that I heard of that really meshed the two that made sense to me for what I was dealing with. Because again, you can take all the neat, fancy track drills in the world, but if I'm working with a football player, a basketball player, a baseball player, I got to get stuff to, again, translate it over to what they're doing. And so, he was really the one that I came into, that I studied, that it started, a lot of the stuff started making sense for everything that I worked with.
Now, I touched on that before we got into the Charlie Francis thing, but it was something I'd kind of maybe heard you allude to, but you never really got very deep into it. But we talked about some of your mentors as we've been along here, moving out of the role of impersonation into your own path, whatever it is you're doing now. I mean, you can take the mentor's advice and you can do what you want to do, but I think it's easy to impersonate somebody and never become your full self.
Oh, yeah.
When did you kind of realize, hey, this is what I want. I'll take this advice. I'll put it in, but I'm me. When did that come about?
Oh, gosh. I can tell you this. I was the world's worst Jeff Connors impersonator probably for about the first 3 or 4 years of my career after leaving him. I was a part of the staff prior to him coming into North Carolina when he came in. So I saw that transition of staff and how he handled it. And I'll never forget, I go into Western Carolina and I do exactly what he did. And oh my gosh, did I fall so flat on my face. It was so bad. It took me probably about 2 years to recover from that with those kids, because what I said, how I said it, it was not the right thing, not the right time. So that was my first aha moment. Hey, you don't be a moron. I got to be better. I need more wisdom in that respect. And so luckily, a couple of years later, I go on to Kent State, and I remembered my mistake. And so I'll never forget it. I go to our head coach. I came in there like 2 weeks to go in the summer. And I go to the head coach and I say, who is the biggest, baddest dude we got? Like, who is the alpha dog? It says Danny Mura. I said, okay. He unfortunately was here recently in the news for some bad things. But I still love Danny. I don't know what is going on in his life, and I pray for him. I do. But Danny played defensive line for us, played in the NFL for about 10 years. And he's probably 6'3", about 280, 290. And so I said, all right, coach, I need you to call. This was before I met the team. I said, all right, I need you to call Danny. I need to sit down with him. And he said, okay. So my first day there, we bring Danny in, and the head coach is sitting there. And I said, Danny, met him, I'm Coach Jacobi, blah, 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 blah. And I said, Danny, I need you to help me. He looked at me kind of funny because you could tell a coach had never asked him for help. And I said, I need you to allow me to do whatever I think I need to do to you over these next couple weeks. And I don't need you to respond negatively to it. Whatever I say to you, whatever I make you do, it's not personal. I'm trying to get everybody else's attention. So I already know you're a great player. I loved him up. And he was a great player. You start for a Super Bowl team, you're a pretty daggum good football player. And, he took it. He said, all right. And for the next 2 weeks, I literally, this is, bad of me to say, I should have been better. I dog cussed that kid every second of his existence around me. I yelled at that kid more than I'd ever yelled at anyone else. If somebody else messed up, I was on Danny about it. The good thing was, what it showed was, hey, I was a psycho. B, because if he wanted to hit me, he would have killed me. B, it got everybody else's attention really quick. And I didn't have to have all of this negative ideas and mindsets about what I was doing, because I came in and I changed everything from what they were doing. But being able to take Danny and say, okay, this is what I'm doing. This is why I'm doing it. And I would literally, call him like later that day after workouts. You okay? We're still good. Like checking in to make sure he's all right. Because what I said to him, I'd never want my mother to hear. But it worked really, really well. And he got it. He understood it. And we had a really, really good season. And I think that was a piece of that catalyst, or that was a catalyst to having our guys buy into what we were doing as a staff. And, the impact was phenomenal. But, that was really that first time, probably for maybe about 8 years into, where I said, okay, I've got to be me. I've got to be smarter about what I'm doing. I can't be anybody else. I've got to be Toby. And, it worked out well. So
it kind of goes back to, you can have all the ingredients, but it matters how you use them. You may have had all the same ingredients as Connor, but how you put them in there didn't come out the same.
No.
Now, this is something I think I learned with horses, and it's carried over to athletes well, and I think it's served me well so far in my career. But learning to really watch athletes train, how they move, what they do. Seems like listening to you really found enjoyment in that, and then that's helped make you what you are today. I'm trying to figure out how to phrase a question. I know what I got in my head, but getting it out there. But when did you figure out how applicable it was to watch athletes train as opposed to just barking orders at them?
I think that was early on. Again, I worked with some really, really great technical coaches early on. When Coach Connors came into UNC, he brought in a guy by the name of Clay Matthews, not the guy who played in the NFL. Clay was this little skinny, had glasses, looked kind of really nerdy, but he was an Olympic weightlifter. Like the first time I met him, he was 176 pounds. He was split jerking 352 for reps. Like, I walk in the door, I'm like, holy crap. So being around him and just his technical eye was really, really good for me. Again, being around Coach Connors early on, his technical eye when it comes to sprinting, really, really good for me. When Coach Connors came in, kind of separated the football and the Olympic department, and Greg Gatz, who is a big Vern Gambetta guy, seeing how he taught speed, seeing how he taught technical lifts was really, really good for me. So I learned early on movement mattered. And it's just been something I've paid attention to, tried to pay attention to more and more as I've gotten older. And obviously coming to the high school level, totally different. Because college level, 99% of your kids, you show them one time, you tell them once, pick it up. High school level, middle school level, you're working on progressions for multiple weeks just to get a movement pattern down. So I've always been a big believer in progressions. And so that just really, it makes a lot of sense to me in my mind. So watching kids move, watching them, how they manipulate their own bodies to move the way they think you want them to, is something that I enjoy.
Okay, before we get into this last little set of questions, I've had you on here quite a while. We'll take a hard right turn. I got told that you really enjoy smoking meat and running the smoker. So I'm from Kansas City, just south of Kansas City. That seems to be bred into all of us here. But you had told me you had made some beef ribs. Beef ribs
Yep.
are incredibly difficult to get
Yes.
right.
Yes.
So how have you been able to kind of get your beef ribs tasting how you want?
Well, I think there's a lot easier, a lot less work to me than pork ribs. Golly. My beef ribs, we have a great butcher down the road. So being able to go get those big dino ribs, my pit bulls love when I do that because they get the bones. I find them all over my yard. But when I first did the beef rib, I tried to do it exactly like a pork rib. And it was okay. And then I got hooked on this, really watching a lot of barbecue shows. Barbecue Pitmasters was one of my favorite shows when it was on. I loved it and really got into it. And so that's when I started really finding a hobby, I guess, for the first time in my life, other than working out. And so then, just fine tuning what I do. But honestly, I'll treat my beef ribs just like I do a brisket. I just think it's that it just makes, you want the end result. You want a tender, juicy piece of meat. You don't want it to be nasty and rough and tough. So I'm going to treat it just like a brisket. So I really keep it simple with the rub, salt and pepper. That's about it. Maybe a little bit of garlic. And then put it on the smoker and no more than 250 degrees. And you just got to wait. That's the hardest part. If you know anything about smoking beef, you're always going to get to a point where I've seen it probably about 135 degrees. It stalls, and it'll just sit there for hours and hours and hours. So just having that patience is the biggest thing with that. But I enjoy, I guess, beef a little bit more. There was one time I was going to, it was my first year at Strong Rock. The NSCA Coaches Convention was in San Antonio, Texas. And I had to go to get my CEUs. Strong Rock didn't have enough money to fly me out there. So I had to drive. So I drove from Atlanta to San Antonio. I had a buddy of mine. He was the head strength coach at Morgan State at the time. He had interned for me and at Charleston Southern. He'd actually worked at East Carolina as well. He flew down and he hung out with me on Monday, and then we left Tuesday. And we drove all through the night. I think we left like late night, Tuesday or whatever. And we drove all the way through, and we strategically made our path go by Lockhart, Texas, which is the barbecue capital of Texas. And we went into Black's Barbecue, which is the single oldest single family owned restaurant in the state of Texas. And I got those beef ribs there and brisket and sausage. I was like, oh my gosh, this is like life changing. So I have strived to try and make my beef taste like that. So I'm getting better.
The thing with beef is every brisket's going to break different.
Yeah.
You can't just pull it at 210, or 200. It's one might break at 195, another one might break at 215. And unless you wait for that point, you're not going to get what you want.
Yeah. And my hardest part is having to wait. Once it's done, I got to go let it rest for 2 or 3 more hours. I don't want that. I want to eat. I've worked 12, 13, 14 hours for this. I want my food.
So with the holidays coming up when this gets aired, what are you looking to cook for the holidays between Thanksgiving and Christmas, something in there?
It's funny you asked that because my wife and I we were talking about that yesterday. I am thinking I saw online somewhere where they have somebody did a pulled ham. They smoked the pulled ham. So I said, okay, I think we could do that. And we've smoked turkeys before. That's been okay, but we really don't ever eat the whole turkey with our family because we have a lot of my wife's family comes. So we're going to probably have to figure out how to open or get the space on my smoker. We'll probably smoke a turkey breast, and we're going to try the pulled ham this year. So we've done the spiral. It's come out really good. So we will definitely do that. We've done prime rib as well and had pretty good success with that too. So
with that turkey, I tried this the last few years, and man, I really liked it. But spatchcocking that turkey,
yeah,
and then it gets it flat, fits in the smoker good. Well, then you can brine it flat, and then I'll actually sous vide it. So sous vide it up to 150, whatever you want, 155 for 5 hours or whatever, and then finish it on the smoker.
Yeah,
to bring it up to 165, and man, that was some of the best turkeys I've ever made. Doing it that way. Now it's a process, but it's a totally different tasting turkey for sure, right, because it's way more moist. It's way more what you would run into at a smokehouse. But I'll redirect this back to the stuff we were talking about previously. But I think about this a lot, and you hit on it in some of the stuff you had talked about previously. So we'll ask a few of these, and I'll let you enjoy your evening. But the kids haven't changed, and it's not a fair assessment of the situation to blame kids for changing. That's seems to be how I've come to realize it. The environment in which they're raised has changed, but you watch these kids lift weights, you will watch these kids interact with each other. It's just the same as what we did when we were their age. The expectation's just different. Is that how you see it, or am I a little off?
No, I think you're 100% on. I don't think kids have changed at all. I think parents have drastically changed. I see a noticeable difference in the parents I worked with when I first got to Strong Rock and a lot of the parents we have now. I see a drastic change in that. Also, the thing I would also say is the systems that are now in place that influence kids outside of our areas, the existential things, the periphery stuff is so much more influence. It is so much more influential now. When I was in high school, did you play AAU? Yeah, you probably, if you were a good basketball player, you may have played AAU. But that was it. Your basketball coach was the one that was in charge of your recruiting and, where you went on visits and all that kind of stuff. Now, you got kids that may not even play their school sports and sign scholarships, whether it's off a travel ball or so. All those entities have really, really, really changed the high school athletic environment. But I think the kids are still the same. If anything, I think kids maybe are more scared. I was talking about this with my wife, my oldest. They're more scared of failure now than they've ever been before. They are more scared of failure.
There actually is a lot to that now that you say that. I hadn't reflected on that idea until you said that, but if you talk to a kid right now, they are very high achieving individuals.
Yeah. Well, I was talking with a good buddy of mine who actually lives in Kansas City, used to coach the Chiefs. And he's like, Toby, man, we're our kids just so much bigger and faster, because you talk about these 40 times and he's got his sons are getting older and play sports. And, it's like, are they just bigger and more athletic? I said, no. I think what it is we have metrics now that are more measured, and things are a little bit more structured. But it's really, it's amazing where we just have kids who are so afraid to fail, and I heard this term when I was coaching Charleston Southern. We had a great academic lady, Christy Fairclough Dixon. Awesome. And we would talk and converse because I'd have to get class schedules from her, everything like that. And she made a comment. I was like, wow, I thought that was genius. We'd all heard the term helicopter parent. Well, my last year there, she goes, Coach, that doesn't exist anymore. They ain't helicopters no more. They're lawnmowers. Parents are now getting in there, getting out in front of the kid, and they're mowing everything down so that their kid it can be real easy for the kid. And I was like, wow, that makes a lot of sense. And it's true. It really is. Parents, are not as, and as a parent, I don't know if you've got kids, I've got, we all want to have our kids have it better than we did. That's natural. It is. But I think I've seen a societal shift where you're going to see, and I don't know if it gets better, but you're going to see it get worse. I think you can see it get worse and worse where the kids' failure is, they're just so scared of it because they've never had to deal with it. You think about COVID and, I remember and we all got out of school for COVID and they said, okay, your kid can't have a lower grade. You can't have the lower grade for the final than what the 9 weeks was at. And that was industry across the board. I don't care what school you're at, but we have, as a society, have really had kids so afraid to fail. And I know for me, my failures are the best learning experiences I've probably ever had.
Well, and I think you're right. And I think we're moving from a lawnmower parent almost to a bulldozer parent.
Yeah. I would agree. And, that's again, like I said, I've seen that shift in my own life, at my own work experience, just from the time I've been at Strong Rock, where we had, and again, my view may not have been as wide as it is now. So I would not have had as much experience with a lot of the parents, because we've grown our program. I mean, I went from having classes of 15 to, 10 to now all my classes are full at 30. So, maybe my scope, it was not as big as what it now is, but I've seen a change. I've seen a change for sure. So
you brought something up in there. I do prepcast for the local high school football team. We call the game, we broadcast, whatever. And part of that, back when I first started, was I would call opposing coaches and I would interview them and kind of, that way we had something to talk about the game.
Yeah.
And I got to talk to a coach, and he'd been in the business for a very long time, over 40 years, coaching high school football, small Missouri high school football. And he brought up what you did. He was a little bit more resentful about it, but the stuff that drives the school is removed, or the stuff that drives the kids now is a lot of it is removed from the school. He viewed it as a loss of control that the school once had. The school wasn't the central system because of, like you said, baseball, softball, basketball. But that was his problem, not the kids' problem. Like you said, the kids didn't change. They were still looking for opportunities to play sports. That opportunity had arisen from outside sources. Now, whether you agree with competition ball or not, that's beside the point. But you still have to deal with those kids and help them reach their goals. Because like you said, their view of it is they're just trying to succeed. They're not trying to take something away from the school. They're just trying to achieve something in their life they want.
Yeah. And right, wrong, or indifferent, the whole travel ball and all that crap, it exists. And it is a part of the system. It's a part of the process now. So way I look at it is I almost look at it as a challenge in the respect of I want to help everything that I could do. Great example, the kid I was telling you about that I went and watched the showcase. Well, I sat down with mom and we started talking about scholarship numbers. I said, are you aware that, NCAA Division II, because Columbus State was D2, offers this? Okay, what's his test score? What's his, GPA? And so I literally pulled it up on my phone. I said, because she's like, oh, his test score is this, this, and this. I love your son. He's a great kid. You know that. I have a great relationship with his family. His test scored about 200 points lower than what you just said. She goes, oh, I didn't know that. And so I look at those opportunities where I want to be a part of that and just to be able to help. Because at the end of the day, whether a kid gets a scholarship or a recognition, if we had everything to do with it or we had nothing to do with it, the kid is the one that's getting that opportunity. It has nothing to do with us. I think as strength and conditioning coaches, we try and take too much credit when we lose, and we try and run from the blame when we don't. And the reality is, I used to say this all the time, kind of was a running joke with our staff at East Carolina, was, we're support staff, and we are. And that's not a bad thing. I embrace it. I embrace the fact that I want to help our kids in any way, shape, or form be successful. Do I want my kids at my place training with me all the time? 100%. But we've created a culture where I got a lot of kids who love to lift weights. Well, they want to go to the gym because they have more machines. Okay, great. I have no problem with that. Go do it. You know what I did? Got on our team builder app. Bam. I literally made a workout based around everything that we did for every single day of the week. Extra work. And I uploaded it to all their team builder accounts. So I'd say, hey guys, if you want to do this, you can. If not, it's not going to hurt my feelings. But I'm going to help support you in things that you guys like to do. And I think that's important. And again, that goes back, that helps me with the relationship part, with the engagement part, and being able to get kids to do what I need them to do so I can help guide them to be successful.
Your ability to relate to kids definitely shows, because that goes a long ways with kids. If you take a hardline stance, you're almost going to assure they're going to go do some stuff you don't want them to do. Where when you start helping and advising and all those things, are like, okay, well, maybe coach actually does want to see us succeed.
Well, and I'm not going to say I'm perfect in any way, shape. I have failed multiple times with that. But again, I'm not afraid to fail, and I learn from my failures. And so I just want to cultivate a place where our kids come in and they work hard, they're respectful, and honestly, I just want our kids to be able to espouse our core values: respect, excellence, accountability, performance. I want them to be respectful. I want them to be good young men. I want them to understand what excellence is and what that means about striving for excellence. I want them to embrace being held accountable as opposed to run from it. And I want them to understand, hey, in the big scheme of things, we have to perform. Whatever we're doing, whatever we're called to do, we've got to do it to the best of our abilities of what God's given us. And what happens, happens. Do I want it? Would I love Friday night, we're in the Elite Eight, and it's 21-13 with, 4 minutes to go, and we're playing the number one team in the state, and we're hitting them in the mouth, and they can't cover our best player? Do I want to win? Yes. But do I also understand that there's so much more, that there's so many more bigger things than winning a football game, winning a basketball game, winning a baseball game? There's so much more bigger things than getting a scholarship. There's so much more. I tell our kids all the time, I said, and I start this when they're in the 7th grade. I said, I have one goal for you. One goal. That's it. You'll only have one goal that I will have for every single one of you, is that the last time they walk out of the door of our weight room, that they are the best version of themselves they can be. That's my one goal. That's my driving force for all the things that I do. That's why, hey, I'm going to yell at you sometimes. That's why I'm going to tell you things you may not want to hear. That's why I'm going to love you up when I need to. That's why I do what I do. And I tell our parents that. I tell them, when we have our curriculum night or whatever night, I'll be honest with you. I said, if I'm your favorite teacher, you've either figured it out of why I do what I do, or you're not in my class. And that's okay. I don't want to be liked by everybody, because I'll guarantee you everybody doesn't think the way I think. Everybody doesn't operate the way I operate. I'm very much a person that you have to earn what you get. When we do testing, when we use technology, you have to earn that in our weight room. You have to earn using the jump mats. You have to earn doing different things. You have to earn exercises. I think that's vitally important. I tell our kids all the time, if I can't trust you, I can't train you the way that will make you the best. I will train you the way that will keep you the safest, but I have to be able to trust you. And that starts at an early age with our kids as far as implementing that in our programs. But it's just something I, firmly believe in, and I challenge our kids. I try to on a daily basis. But at the same time, too, I try and have fun every once in a while. Jeremy Boone is a friend of mine, and I loved his statement a while back that I heard, that he says you have to be intentional about programming in fun. I was like, you know what? You're right. Because again, that helps build that relationship piece. We have a summer competition, and the winning team, they come over to my house and I cook for them. And we'll have brisket, we'll have baby back ribs, we'll have steak, we'll have, tons of food. And it's gotten to the point where, that's become, kids will fight for that, but the second they walk in that door, they're, when my daughters were little, they were all playing with the guys. Now they're all the same age, so that's a whole different issue. They're not playing with them anymore. but they're around my dogs. They're around my, my wife. I'm literally the one cooking everything. Like, I'm sweating. That's like, I will probably, when they leave my house, I am so happy because I am so tired. We have the tradition now where I have a pool now. And so we play pool basketball. And, it's just those kind of things have really, really helped me connect with kids. And I've been blessed. I really have. I've been lucky enough where a couple of years ago at Strong Rock, we were able to hire one of my former athletes from Western Carolina. We had a coaching position open. He was in transition from Coach Setanta College. Sheldon Gaffney, he's now the head strength coach at Bethune-Cookman. And he needed a job. I said, hey, we got a PD job. You can help me coach after school. He's like, yeah, I'm on. So, being able to help him, but cultivating that relationship, and I think if you take anything away from this, is the best coaches are the most relational coaches. It goes back to, I know everybody blew it up on social media when Nick Saban said he went from a transactional coach to a transformational coach. The whole idea about being a transformational coach is connecting with kids. It's very simply that. And you have to be intentional about it. You have to understand you're not going to connect with everybody. but you're going to have to be intentional about being able to connect with kids as best you can. And some you'll connect better than others. And you'll never know how God will use that. I'll never forget. We had a kid that he was a struggle to deal with a lot of teachers. But for me, he was good. And one day we're in a weight room and something's off. I can just see something's off. And I grabbed him and said, hey, come here, have a seat. After class was over, I said, what's wrong? I said, something's not right. I can see this. I can sense this. And he looked at me, he says, Coach, I don't know what to do. He said, my parents had a big fight last night. My dad left. I don't know where he is. My mom was up all night crying. I got to take care of my little brother and my little sister. He says, I don't know what to do. He said, my mom wouldn't get out of bed. There's nowhere in the NSCA, CSCS book that teaches you how to deal with that. I'm at East Carolina. I noticed I was in charge of golf. It's kind of similar situation where I noticed something was off with one of my female golfers. So I brought her into my office and said, what's going on? What's the deal? And she looks at me, she goes, I want to kill myself. Okay. I am not equipped to handle this. Luckily, I got people involved in that situation that worked. And, obviously the girl had some mental health issues. But they don't tell me those kind of things if I'm not intentional about creating opportunities for a relationship to exist other than just me barking orders at them. Because I can bark with the best of them. But it's one of those things that relationships trump everything else. I firmly believe that as a coach.
And that goes very much with what you said at the beginning. They don't care what you know until they know you care. Yes, everything we talked about in between is just a filler for how those two statements tie together.
Yep, no doubt. No doubt.
Well, to ask this last question, I've been wondering about it, and me and you talked about it this week, but you went to Ireland or through a school in Ireland, Setanta, to get your master's degree. There's a lot of universities in the United States. What pushed you to Ireland to pursue your master's degree?
Well, it's funny because I did look at a lot of schools in the U.S., and it was through a connection to the NHSSCA that was able to meet some of those guys, some of the professors at Setanta and talk to them. And I did some homework on them, and I noticed that the mindset and I guess the philosophy of training internationally compared to what we have in the United States is a lot different. And so I wanted to challenge myself. I want to be better. I wanted to grow. And I've always wanted to get my master's degree. I tried a couple times, but my jobs just kept getting in the way because I kept getting more and more different jobs. So I had to focus on that. So my education kind of took a back burner. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to bite the bullet. I'll figure it out financially. And I did. And it was the best thing. It's been one of the best things I've ever done because it challenged a lot of what I know, what I believe was right. It made me be able to articulate better what I believe. And it's opened my eyes up to there is definitely a gap with what we have in the United States compared to the rest of the world from a physical development standpoint. And so it really was a growth purpose. I wanted to grow. I didn't want to go learn basically what I've been, I coach over 20 years by the time I started my master's degree. I had a master's in strength and conditioning. It was called experience. So I wanted to get outside of my comfort zone and challenge myself. And, that was really one of the reasons, because a lot of the programs in the United States that I looked at, it was all kind of just the same stuff. And the academic world was, almost, I want to say, the academic world. And here in the United States, I think there's a divide between the applied and the academic world here in the U.S. We really struggle to put them together. I think there are a couple schools. Springfield College is pretty famous for putting out strength coaches. And I know the fights pretty well. They do a great job up there. But, Georgia College here, Georgia College State University over in Milledgeville, Mike Martino, he does a pretty good job. But it's hard. It really, really is. And so I wanted to really grow, and Setanta just provided that great opportunity. And, it was a 2-year process. Literally, my graduation's next week. Unfortunately, I can't go to Ireland because I have to go to work. If it was the week later, it would have been perfect because it would have been during Thanksgiving break. And I would have tried to figure that out, but I can't go that last week. But, I had to do a week-long residential. I went to Houston to do that. And we had some of our professors come over and walked us through. Basically, we did classroom work in the morning session, ate lunch, then we did applied stuff in the afternoon. It was really neat because we had a guy from Honduras, a guy from Canada, a guy from Trinidad and Tobago, me, a couple other Americans, and just totally different backgrounds, from private sector to national teams to professional baseball. It was really, really cool to be around them, talk with them, and be able to work through that week. So I would highly recommend, I'm not selling it, but, Setanta, because honestly, it was something I could do and still have a full-time job. The structure of how they did the schooling, and it allowed for me to be able to not just have to sit in a classroom all the time, all day. I could have my full-time job and still be able to get my classwork done.
Well, Coach, you have a ton of great stuff out there for people to look into. I know we didn't get deep into some of the training stuff, but you've covered that on so many other podcasts you were on. I was looking for, kind of a different avenue and make it newer than what you've done in the past. Hopefully we're able to accomplish that. But if people want to know more, they can check out some of those podcasts. And I had a great time covering some of the topics we covered today.
Cool. Well, I appreciate it. It's been a blast.
Well, thank you very much. And I hope you have a good holiday season and enjoy smoking turkeys and hams and everything else you're going to smoke. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. I appreciate it.